Rakib, who is a distinguished instructor and educator who has taken the time to educate himself. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We are here with the Grand Sheikh Abdul Rakib, who is a distinguished instructor and educator who has taken the time to educate himself as to how the law may be used to free ourselves in our community. This is being a show in conjunction with the Moorish Israel Ghaburi Haqail National Sultanate and blood right heirs of the law. We are all students of Sheikh Obashan Goil. We've taken the process. We have distinguished ourselves as the blood right heirs in the land by having our DNA analyzed, paid the costs. We've gotten the silver. We've bonded so that these de facto authorities are forced to recognize those rights that they are obligated to honor. Sheikh Abdul Rakib has spent a lot of time incarcerated by this de facto contingent, and he was able, through the good Lord's will, to come forth with many remedies as a result of his long hours of study. Inshallah ta'ala azim, everyone will remain muted so that there is no disturbance of the presentation. However, the field or the floor will be open for questions at the discernment of the instructor. If there's any disrespect, it will not be tolerated, and you will be in the waiting room, because this is a forum for the Jerry Springer type of audience. Okay, we are all here as citizens. So with that, inshallah, we're going to open with the first chapter of the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Inshallah, Sheikh Abdul Rakib, you're muted. Unmute your microphone. Uh-oh. Yes, everything is being recorded because this presentation will be sent to our contingents, all of those that are participating. Okay, Grand Sheikh Abdul Rakib, are you ready, sir?
I believe so.
Alhamdulillah. Well, this is the Grand Sheikh. This is your show. I'm going to mute out, and we are here for you at this point, sir. Enjoy yourself.
Okay. A situation came about where you guys are trying to find the discharge debt or obligations that you guys tend to receive, like governmental entities and other corporate structures. Well, the truth is, the system only deals with corporations, and it's by design. The fact that it's by design, it's necessary for you to actually understand that how the corporate structure actually works. And you can find this pretty much through the Constitution of the United States. I know a lot of people, when we start studying law, for the reasons why we study law, we tend to get angry. It's like the system has done us wrong somehow. And then through your studies, you start understanding, well, they're treating me as a corporation. They're treating me as a corporation and things of this nature. When you start thinking, I'm not a corporation, and then you want to identify yourself and say that I'm not a corporation. And the truth is, the system already knows that. The system already knows that you're not a corporation. The problem is that you yourself personally haven't identified how the system actually works. The system is actually for the people's best interests. And bear in mind, we have to that this is an evil monster that's designed, or a necessary evil. the system could be considered a necessary evil for the governance of a nation. Not everybody in our country is so therefore created and put in play ways to eliminate or to cause these individuals that are not of good nature to to handle them. And then anytime we find ourselves in a ticket or a citation or indictment or a tax bill, and when we see these bills accumulating, we worry about them and we're like, oh man, the government's bad. But you have to remember that the government was designed by the people, for the people. And then when you look in the mirror, guess what you have to realize? You're one of the people. So then you have a government that the people created, and then you're one of the people, and then they send you a bill that says this person, and this talking about you, I'm talking about the person that's actually on the bill, which the person on the bill is a corporate fiction. It says this person owes. When this person owes, it indicates that the government is doing their job and they're billing corporations for the benefit of the people. A problem is that you're going to forget that you're one of the people when they give you the bill. I was telling the brother earlier, there's a situation like if you were the one who, if you ruled everything, you personally, and everyone owed you money. If everyone money, would you want to take your time to go collect money from everyone? You'd spend your time collecting money from everyone that owes you money? Well, it wouldn't be fun to go collect money from everybody that owes you money, even though it's money owed to you. So what do? You hire or you put in somebody else or give a responsibility to a being or entity which has a duty to collect. And then when they go to collect, they'll collect by all means necessary. When they go collect by all means necessary, they may have to do some unsavory things to collect your money because not everybody wants to pay the money when they're. Could you imagine that? If a person, you go to collect some money and they say, well, I'm here to collect such and such as money, and they might duck you or dodge you. So what happens? That tax or the money that person who you designed to go collect taxes, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do things that are not favorable sometimes to do it. And are they wrong for that? They're not wrong for it, according to you, because guess what they're doing? They're just doing their job that you appointed them to do. Does that make sense? And this is how our government works. Our government works like this, and they collect taxes for the people. Now, and they'll do it by all means necessary. This is how it actually works. Now you have to ask yourself the question. Now, if I had to beat if if your government had to beat somebody down, put them in a stockade or put them in prison or do some bad stuff to them, would they be wrong for it? They're just doing their job. Now comes the situation wherein here your mother, this same individual, your mother, she owes money too because their job is collect taxes for you. And then I see let's say that I'm the one collecting taxes for you. I see your mother, and I'm like, yeah, ma'am, I'm gonna have to beat your ass and take this money because such and such, as money to such and such. And I'll show an example that look, she owes us money, boss. I'm about to beat her ass, and I'm gonna put her in a stockade for you, boss. I need you to fund it. Now you have to ask yourself the question: prior to this being your mother, me beating everybody ass to collect your money was completely acceptable. It was a practice that you admired. Like, yeah, Tommy or Abdul Rakib, he's a good dude because he's collecting all. But now that I'm about to beat your mom's ass, I'm about to beat her, and she's looking at you all crazy and stuff, and I'm like, boss, just sign off on this to do it. Sign off on it. I'm about to do it. And then guess what you say? You have to give me a pass. You're going to give me a pass. It's called an exemption. You're going to exempt me from my duty, and exempt me from my liability. What is my liability? To collect for you. And there's two said to the effect, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. That's the legal concept is because in this situation, the debtor, the debtor to you right now is me because to collect for you. I'm attacking this individual. I'm collecting for you. So my job, my duty, I'm hired to do that. So I'm your debtor. My debtor, and I see another debtor. I said, look, she owes money. So in order for me to be given for my debt, I have to get your forgiveness. So you have two debtors here, and you're going to exempt or forgive my liability to collect for who? To collect for you. And then her liability for whatever the reason why that tax is owed. And if you can understand that this is how the government works, they're going to tax, because that's what their job is there for. And at the end of the year, they give all the people a tax refund. They give, after they tax all the corporations, at the end of the year, tax the people a tax refund. And then guess what the people say? You've done a good job. Done a good job every time. At the end of the year, when you use those funds, you feel inclined, yeah, just you've done a good job. But now we're going to go back to your mother real fast. When it since my duty is to collect, I'm going to collect your mom even, unless there's an exemption that's given from who? The person who is the taxes are to be collected for, meaning you. And because if you don't exempt my liability, if you don't exempt her liability, I am going to do my job. And this is a fact, because that's what my job is, and that's what I was designed for as your government. And this is all written in law. Now the question is, well, we're talking about your mother, but in this situation, and in reality, they're not talking about your mother. They're talking about your person, your account, your corporate fiction. Each situation, they take you and they show you a charging instrument. And guess who's on your charging instrument? Your person. Your person is a separate legal entity that exists, that coexists. You got a relationship, a sonic relationship, wherein you and your person are two separate entities. There's a human being, a natural person, there's an artificial person. And a problem with the government is because you know this, but you don't accept it. And watch, and I'll show you how this person exists. Let's say that you have $1,000,000. For some reason, you're down the block, and you got $1,000,000 cash walking down the street. That would be like the dumbest stuff possible. Why? Because if you have $1,000,000 cash, I am going to rob you. Because a fool and his money shall soon part. Some basic logic. Because why would you keep $1,000,000 cash on you? It doesn't. So what happens is, but you're smart and you got the money legit. So instead of carrying $1,000,000 cash, what you go take that $1,000,000 and you go to your nearest bank. I'll say Bank of America, and you be like, and then you go to Bank of America and you say, I would like to deposit this money into the bank. As you deposit it into the bank, they're going to say, what name would you like it in, sir? Then we're going to say your name is John Doe, for an example. And then you say you're going to put it in John Doe's name. So 1 minute, a human being, a flesh and blood, a natural person, you have cash in your hand. You have $1,000,000 cash in your hand, but you go to the Bank of America. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to take the $1,000,000 cash that you have in your hand, and they're going to put an account. And the name of the account is going to be what? John Doe. John Doe is now 1 minute. You had $1,000,000 cash, but now you're going to John Doe, artificial being. He's going to hold $1,000,000 cash in trust. In God we trust. The whole concept of trust is not trusting in God. It's under the laws. We the people use trust account. So now 1 minute You had $1 million. Now, the next minute, John Doe, a corporate or artificial person, has $1 million in trust with America. So now you have to take into consideration somebody have $1 million. Can you say yes? You have it in trust with America and John Doe, in the name of John Doe. Now, let's say that you die. Let's say you die tomorrow. Guess who's still going to have $1 million? Bank of America, John Doe. Once you're able to determine and to differentiate yourself, the human being, John Doe, the corporate fiction, then you can start understanding how they could give John Doe 10 life sentences. John Doe could do 10 life sentences because he's a name on he's on an account. He's on an account and he 10 life sentences. And they're creating a trust account with this person. But now we're going I don't when I start talking about the negative effect of, like going to incarceration, you'll lose sight of the whole concept of, we're going back to Bank of America. Bank of America in and of itself is a trust that's established for your benefit. So and back to the fact that you own the money that's in that trust, and who can determine what happens with that trust? You, because you're the one who presented the money to them. Do you understand that? You presented the $1 million to them, and now and it's all for your benefit. So now Bank of America becomes a trustee, or they become the trustee of a trust, and John Doe becomes a trustee as well. So you have two legal entities, Bank of America and John Doe. One is the settler of the trust, and one trustee in the trust that's established for your benefit. Does that make sense? If you shake your head, I could see you shaking your head. But understand it. So now that trust is there, okay? So now we understand that. So now, what if America is starting to charge you these astronomical fees for holding your money? Right. Your money to do what? Take your money out of there and go deposit it with some other. You understand that? And when you go to deposit bank, Chase Bank, or else if you create your own bank at your own home, you could withdraw your money and deposit it into another trust. Because if the bank is not doing what you want it to do, it's your right to take your money out of there. Because in God, the people trust. We use trust accounts. So now, when you're able to ascertain that concept, who's representing your in this particular situation? In this particular situation, there's a corporate fiction named John Doe and Bank of America. Which one are you? You're neither one of. The fact that you're neither one of these indicate that they represent you. And I want you to understand something, a very key important factor in understanding what a republic is. It's a system of government in which the people hold the sovereign power and elect representatives to exercise that power. And this is a concept that a lot of people you probably won't get for a long time. But when you understand what representatives are, and our legal system is designed dealing with representatives, not the actual human being. And when you come into a courtroom or you come into the system and you're sitting there saying, hey, I'm not this, I'm not that, they know you're not, because their system is completely designed to deal with representatives, dealing with trusts. And guess what you should do? Know that they're dealing with trust, and you should accept the fact that they're dealing with trust and understand how the trust work. You remember I mentioned if Bank of is charging too many fees, take into consideration if it's not doing what is right, then it's your duty, your right, your responsibility to change the trust. And the system knows, okay, okay. Now, for an example, I have to point clear that in our system, the slave trade is real. And I point out the slave trade is real because they use your as an avenue in which they enslave people. And because it's not you, they make it lawful to enslave people because it's not you. And what each human being or you heard the term human resource before. The human being has a monetary value to it. And I know some people talk about the gold standard. You heard about the gold standard and they got rid of the gold standard. Well, gold is just one commodity. I wouldn't want 100 pounds of gold, but I'd rather have 200 pounds of human flesh that could work a field. So, okay, just a second. Just a second. Am I still there? Okay. Understanding this, gold is that, but human flesh is something else that could be used as a medium of exchange. And each time the system comes to you, they're offering up slave trade. I don't know if you guys ever looked at your state's constitution or the United States Constitution, right? But in each state constitution, there's a slavery provision. Do you guys ever look at your state constitutions? Each state constitution has a slavery provision, which affords them the opportunity to engage in trade. And now we ourselves personally, we sit up here and say, we say that slavery is over. No, slavery is not over. Slavery will never end, and I'm here to tell you because slavery is a good thing. Slavery is a good if you're a slave owner. It's a basic concept. It's a good thing if you're a slave owner. But what we failed to do is we never understood the concept of slavery, and we always object to the concept. Our ancestors were slaves. But if we're the ones that actually own the rights to the slave, who could free the slave? But the slave owner. So when you start understanding that, instead of arguing the validity of what's wrong and what's right, responsibility for it, then you could make an adjustment. Because when we understanding the concept of the republic is a system of government in which the people hold the sovereign power. And I'm gonna be honest, each time they deal with us, they trick us because of our education, because of our lack of education, rather. And by doing so, here they give you so many opportunities to receive the taxes that's collected. But we fail to do so because we're sitting up here thinking, man, I got to pay this bill. I have to pay this bill. But when you actually understand who the government actually works for, it works for people. And then you have to understand that you have the exemption that you could give the government, which would defray their liability to you. And then if there's any interest that's accrued from them, you're entitled to it. And then that some people don't get. Remember who the government has to collect taxes for. If you're to go to the article, the preamble to the United States Constitution, it clearly says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to perfect union." And what that statement denotes is that the people are actually authorizing the government to engage in business for the people. Then you go to the enumeration of powers. Congress should have taxes. And then the last article, the last clause in there, it says, and make all laws necessary and proper to carry into the execution of foregoing powers, which means that we could collect taxes by all means necessary. Congress has the authority to collect taxes by all means necessary. Now, there's a couple factors you have to understand here. Who gave Congress the authority to do this? We, the people. So now here, we, the people, we gave Congress the authority to lay and collect taxes. But then, since we, the people, did it, they're collecting taxes for us. But now, tax us to death. Now they're going to start, as they tax, it's like, man, now you start flexing their taxes. They got to lock a nigga up for a bullet. You catch a nigga with a bullet, and he doesn't. They're going to tax him for having a bullet. They're going to say, "Look, nigga, you had a bullet, and now bullet." Now, how many people have you ever known die from having a bullet? For having a bullet, but they've been able to pull For each statute that a person violates, there's a statutory monetary amount that comes along with it. And so each time when they charge you criminally, they're putting a monetary amount with it, and that's because of the taxing clause, the commerce and the taxing clause by the enumeration of powers that they were given by the Constitution. So they know that you're afraid. The method in which they attack you, they use your fear, because it's like I personally, I know how this works. What they do is I've seen niggas get locked up for child support. Right. So once you start seeing somebody get locked up for child support, it's like, wow, they could do this. Then I've seen people go do time for bullets. I've seen people do time way less than that. And so, but guess what? No one is, but they're not followed. They don't ever look at. So let's say they go get all of us in a bullpen. They go get all of us in a bullpen. One of these older brothers, he gonna go tell you, man, go take that deal. You better take that deal, because this is what they could do this, they could do that. And so now this person is going to train you to think that what they're doing is all means necessary. And they use the commerce clause for it. And when they do that, they're going to be like, if they come up with a law, like a nigga with bullet, with gun law, and guess what they're going to do? They're going to tax the account. And then what we fail to understand is they're going to put it on a piece of paper. And because you have to understand the concept of slavery, though. And I bring out the whole concept of slavery, they're going to put the person on the account. They're going to catch this person, and they're going to take they want to make sure that you authorizing this, because guess where they get their authority from? They get their authority from we, the people. They're going to, but they know how stupid you are. I mean, some of us, we feel like we're extremely intelligent, but we have to look in overall that the system looks at us as extremely ignorant. So they go give you a ticket. They said, look, nigga, you had a bullet. They put a gun to your head. Now you're afraid. Because they caught you with a bullet. Oh man, I'm a nigga with a bullet. Now all of a sudden, now the guilt kicks in. When guilt kicks in, now you're not thinking. I'm a nigga with a bullet. Oh shit, I didn't have a bullet. Now, as you're thinking about this damn bullet, you're not paying no attention to what's really going on here. Now he's going to put you in the back of a squad car. He's going to put you in the back of a cramped squad car. And then he's going to take you to the county jail or whatnot. He's going to process your person. They're going to say, what's your security number? They're going to get your information. You're going to look at your ID. Then that person that's on that ID. He's going to book that person on the ID and say, nigga had bullet. He's going to humiliate you. He's going to take your body. And he's going to take you and tell you to strip butt naked. He's going to have you do some things that you wouldn't normally do around men, like bending over and all of this other stuff. And this is a humiliating process. He's dehumanizing you. He's dehumanizing a man or any individual. He's dehumanizing you. And what he's going to do, and then he's going to give you a bill. He's going to pull out a piece of paper that he's going to file with the court. And so now guess what he turned you into? He psychologically messed you by the inhumane treatment that he's given you. So now you're not thinking like a normal man. But guess what he's giving you? He's giving you a bill. He's giving you a tax bill. But remember, it does, right? They collect taxes for who? The people. And see, they're not on that charging instrument. They're charging your person, mama. You have on that bill that you're responsible to take care of. You have a person on that bill that you're responsible to take care of. Yet guess what you fail to understand? That you're one of the people. And these guys are just doing their job because the slave trade is real. So now what they do, bring you into the courtroom. Because they did give you a copy of the charging instrument. They give you a copy of the charging instrument. Well, I'm trying to pull up a piece of paper, but they give you a copy of the charging instrument, which indicates that, look, we booked a nigga. We created an account. Instead of, you remember we were at Bank of America and we put $1 million into bank account? The $1 million had a value to it, right? So therefore, a trust was established. First, you have the trust. You have to have three parties. You have to have a settler. You have to have there's like four parts. You have to have a settle. You have to have the one who creates the trust. Then you have to have a trustee who oversees the trust, meaning John Doe. Then you have to have the beneficiary from the trust, meaning the person who's supposed to benefit from the trust existence. And you have to have the trust property, the RIS, the subject matter. When you started the bank, now you know who the settler was. The settler was who? Bank of America. Who's the trustee? The corporate fiction, John Doe, who sits on the account, who's the overseer of the trust property. What was the trust property? The money, the $1 million. And who's the beneficiary from the trust? You are, because you're the reason why the trust is in existence in the first place. Now, did you want your money in Bank of America? Of course you wanted your money in Bank of America. Why? Because while your money's in Bank of America, I'm not going to rob you. Because if I catch a nigga with $1 million on the street, and I'm not no thief, I'm not no robber, but if I catch you with $1 million, I'm gonna do whatever in my I'm personally I have to do it because it's like, why do you have $1 million out here? Do you give? It's not even in my nature, but it's like, damn nigga, you got $1 million out here. That doesn't make any sense. Let me get that. Do you see that? So when you start understanding that, it's just like, I gotta take it. So now understand this. This is the exact concept that the courts, when they find a nigga that's doing something that's crazy, what they're going to do is they're going to create a trust. But we're not talking about here. We're going to talk about the trust property. The trust property in this case is that flesh and blood slave that's running around here that ain't nobody claiming. And how that works is, it's like, you remember, you're first you're free. Then they saw that there's a corporate fiction here, John Doe. And then they go catch this. They're going to consider you a wild animal. This nigga a nigga with a nigga with bully. So what did they do? They booked you. They booked you. Then they ask you your name and stuff like that. Then, because guess what? They're not doing this for themselves technically. They're doing it for the people. So then when after they give you the or the ticket, they're going to give it to you. They're going to give it to you. And once they give it to you, they're going to be like, yeah, we gave this nigga. They gave you your tax refund. Because guess what they're actually giving you? They're giving you indication, documentation of the actual debt that's owed, and they're offering you the opportunity to resolve the matter. Now, niggas, I'm being honest, niggas aren't bright. And this is something that once we're able to accept this, niggas aren't bright. But then and if you're black, they're going to automatically assume that you're what? You're going to assume you're a nigga. But when you understand that they're assuming that you're a nigga, then this is a new issue, because they do it to any race, color, creed, or anything like that. Because if you fit a certain category, you just fit that category. But it's designed just like this. So then they go take you in, and they're going to treat you like a nigga because you've been acting like one your whole life. How do they know that? They look at your criminal record. It says this nigga that took this dumbass nigga deal over and over again. It just shows this. So they're going to give you the citation. They go give you the citation. They give you this bill. And then and guess what they do? They go get a trapper and trader. A slave trapper and trader. But you know, the good cop, bad cop, it's the attorney. If you're and I strongly suggest that you all get a Black's Law Dictionary or the Black's Law Dictionary app on your phone, because then you can break this stuff down. What an attorney is designated to transact business for another. That's what the definition is. His job is to transact business. His job is not to free you. His job is not to save you. His job is to transact business. Then if you're to go to the root word, attorn, T-O-R-N, to transfer property or goods to another. So now here they go get an attorney. Here they go caught them a fresh dumb nigga. And because this is business, it's never personal. And so what they did is they created a documented title with the charging instrument. And what it's a documented title because once they booked you, they indicated what property that's the subject matter of that trust. They've established the property matter or the subject matter of the trust. Do they have the settler? Yeah, it's the city of Detroit. That's who's going to be on the document. That's going to be the settler in the state of Michigan. Then there's which is defendant John. Then once they have the subject matter or the trust property, your flesh and blood. Now guess what they have to do? They have to give the instrument to one of the people to resolve the matter. Subsequently, guess who the people is? It's you as well. Then the judge, when they bring you before the judge is going to ask you a simple question. Did you receive this? And what does the nigga say? Yes. Do you understand the nature of what you've been charged with? The attorney passed the dumb nigga on the shoulder. Just say yes. I'm going to come downstairs and talk to you. Come downstairs and I'm going to talk to you. He pats you on your shoulder because guess what he's doing? He's wooing the dumb nigga. And this is the concept because this is the business that he's in. He's a slave trader, a trapper and trader. This is the business that he's in. And once you understand that he's slave trading, he's trapping it, and he says and then you got to remember what the cop did. The cop put a gun to your head. He put you in a cage. He put you in a cage. He stripped you and he made you spread your butt cheeks and cough and some weird shit. So now all of a sudden, out here you got this other guy here. He's to pat you on your, make you feel better. Why? I must trust him. Then all the dumbass homies, guess what they tell you? You man, he's a good attorney. He's good at stuff like that. The only person in the world you trust is this nigga that you don't know. You know this fool? You don't know him at all, but you trust him because he's an attorney and you know that you're a dumbass nigga on the low. You're not gonna say that you're a dumbass nigga out in public, but you'll say it on the low though. So it's like to show how stupid you are, you're gonna pay him a lot of money. The more money and get to for a deal, he's gonna say, this is how much time they could offer you. This is how much time we'll see about if we could get you out of this. But then he's gonna present all the evidence, like the evidence that you had the gun or the bullet. The cop pulled it out the car. He pulled it out the car with your fingerprints on it and stuff like this nature. So now you're like, man, I had the bullet, but you're failing to understand that this is a business transaction that's coming along here. The judge is gonna back to the judge. The judge is gonna say, do you understand the nature of what you've been charged with? And the attorney told you to say yes, and you said yes. So now, guess what? Now in a court of law, you have to speak what? The truth, whole truth, but the truth. So now they have truth that's based upon a lie. The lie is that you don't know what's going on here. The truth is they gave you a negotiable instrument that created funding. They created a negotiable instrument that created funding. Now, if you're since you've never studied the law, most people don't study the law. What they said is nigga with gun is a offense at, I'm gonna say $500,000 for the purpose of this presentation. When the nigga had a gun when the nigga had a nigga with bullet or nigga with gun, they say a felony is $500,000. So what they did is when they created in and of itself, they created a $500,000 bill out of thin air, right? The $500,000 bill, it's the base principal amount of the obligation. That's the base principle of the obligation. And who has this bill in their possession? The human being that they gave it to. You remember the judge asked you a simple legal question in a court of law. Did you receive a copy of this? And what did you say? I said, yeah. I said, yes. Okay, so now all the elements are there that you have a $500,000 bill they created. You have a $500,000 bill they created. And $500,000, well, somebody has to pay interest on it as long as this bill isn't in existence. The taxpayers are going to have to pay, they're going to have to pay interest on this $500,000 bill because the state created it. You remember they talk about the taxpayers having to pay? Since they created this $500,000 bill. Now the interest on that $500,000 bill is the real reason why you're in prison. The reason why it's the real beauty behind the actual obligation itself. Because that bill is in existence, interest has to be paid on the initial obligation or the principal obligation. What is 6%? And it's at 6%. And I could show you this all in law. Okay, the 6% on a $500,000 per annum is $30,000. So now we'll look at a nigga with bullet charge. They go give you, the human being, they'll give you, the human being, a $500,000 bill that has to yield $30,000 in pure interest each year. Why would they give it to a nigga? Because the nigga ain't bright enough to claim $30,000 interest that's accruing off that obligation. The nigga ain't bright enough to claim the $30,000. So guess what happens? Unclaimed money goes back into their pocket, 1K and their IRA, or they'll go give it to the B or the DOCs of your particular state because you're not claiming your money from that obligation. See, because who does the government collect taxes for? They can't for the people. Well, if they caught a nigga with a bullet, if they caught that nigga with a bullet, I'm not entitled to collect that money. But since my name is on that obligation and I'm actually holding the obligation as the holder of that actual obligation, if I register ownership of that obligation, I'm entitled to collect the interest that's from that obligation. So now what do they do with niggas? We have to understand this. Once the judge said, do you understand the nature of what you've been charged with? And you said yes. Okay. And then when you said yes, and did you receive it? It was like, yes. So now you're legally in possession of a negotiable instrument that says we're going to tax a nigga. It simply says tax. And they filed it when they registered a copy of it. If you were to look at the instrument, it shows that it's filed and registered in the court. The court has a direct link to the Treasury Department. So what they do is they say that, so filed with the court transmitted to the Treasury Department, in which the taxpayers have to pay the interest on the obligation to whoever holds the obligation. Now, you being the holder of the obligation, entitled to collect the interest from the obligation, which the taxpayers are obligated to pay, right? But guess what? You have to remember that you're a nigga. It's the fact that you're a nigga, you're failing to understand this. So then now the attorney, guess what he does? He tells you, he says, hey, check this out. Man, they can give you 1,000 years in prison, but they'll give you 5. Take this deal. Or where you could rat on somebody or something like that. Take that deal, right? So what do you want to do? See, because he's an attorney, he's strictly there to transact business. His job is not to protect you. His job really isn't there to protect you. So you say, what do you want to do? He's going off, he's leading because nigga, no one really wants dumb niggas on the street. He's dogging you out. But guess whose money it really belongs to? That 5,000, that $30 a month interest, it belongs to you because you're the holder of the actual obligation. You're the judge that you had the possession of it. So now he gets you to sign a dumbass nigga plea agreement. And the plea agreement says, well, I'm gonna do 5 years in prison. Okay, so the DOC is gonna take. So you want the DOC to get your money? Because that's what if you read the words of the plea agreement, this is what it says. So then, once you sign off, say the plea agreement you want the plea agreement, how the plea agreement to work out is the plea agreement said that you want to go to prison. It's really saying you want to go to prison. So now, guess what? It's time for sentencing. or no, it's time for you to go back in front of the judge, because initially you said, I plead not guilty. There's a science behind you plead not guilty, because there's science behind that, how they trick you into that. That's to create the controversy so the court could come in and take jurisdiction over the trust, over the negotiable instrument that he initially gave you. The indictment was you to collect. But when you pled not guilty, the court takes over the instrument, the actual indictment. The indictment is a great, beautiful thing if you're entitled to collect the interest, if you're the one who's controlling the charging instrument, which you are entitled to. You being a dumb nigga, guess what you do? You're letting them do it. You're saying you're appointing them to be the one in charge of it. So we're gonna go back to this about the time for you're gonna change your plea after they psychologically fuck the nigga. You have to understand now. Once the attorney's waiting on it, he's getting you to sign an agreement. It's time. He's gonna get you before this judge. The judge is gonna say, "Did you sign this plea agreement?" And you guess what you say? Yes. When you say yes, he's like, okay. Do you understand that you're giving up your rights, you dumbass nigga? But he says the dumbass nigga under your breath. He doesn't say that out loud because it's inappropriate to say that. It's even though that's what he's really thinking. He said, did you sign this plea agreement? Do you understand that you're giving up your rights? And then in the beginning of the case, you already told him that you understood the nature of what you've been charged with, which means that you know, you as one of the people, you know damn well this is an instrument which it entitles the interest off this obligation. You're entitled to collect the interest that $30,000 per charging per felony. You collect the interest off that. You're the registered holder of it. And he said, were you forced or threatened to do this, you dumbass? He's really saying this because it's like, what man in their right mind would actually, here you're able to collect $30,000 a month, but you're signing over your money to the BOP or DOC. You're signing your money over to the BOP or the DOC. He said, were you forced or threatened into this? And what does the dumb nigga say? He look over at his attorney real fast, and the attorney give him that eye. And he's subject to pat you on your shoulder again. Just to get you into a joint close to home. You remember, they can't give you 1,000 years. This motherfucker's whispering this shit to you, and they're asking, were you forced or threatened into this? And what the nigga says, he says before the judge, and he says, no. They forced you in the squad car. Do you remember that? They forced you in the squad car, and then they said they can give you 1,000 years. So now in open court, and you remember the only time the dumbass nigga is speaking is when they ask him a question and he says, speak up. Instead of speaking about your rights to the interest, your rights to be free and all this other stuff, all your rights, the only time you speak up is when were you forced to threaten, you said. So you forget all the mitigating circumstances that come along with this. Then the judge says, okay, I'll accept your plea. Once he accepts your plea, this is how this works. He accepts your plea. He creates a trust with the judgment. The judgment in and of itself creates another trust. It becomes a trust instrument. You said they put this trust property in the possession of the DOC or BOP, whichever prison you're at. Now the judge certifies that he puts it on the record. And you remember the interest that is paid out, the $30,000. You just authorized the DOC or the BOP to be the beneficiary or the trustee or the executor administrator of the trust that was established. So now they're your daddy. You're awarded a estate. And they're going to treat you as the trust property. Why? Because you never claimed ownership of the subject matter of that case. Does that make sense? So once you're able to understand, wait a second. So now this is as soon as they go take you, and this is very much there, and they don't hide it. It's just that a nigga will never look in the book, and we all, like you already know that the best way to hide something from a nigga is to what? Put it in a book. Okay. So now here the evidence is here. Now what they're going to do is once they certify that judgment against you, this is what they actually do. They're going to actually take they're going to round up all the niggas, and they're going to go put them in a paddy wagon. They're going to put them in the back of the van or bus or whatnot, and they're going to take all of those copies of those judgments. They're going to take a copy of all of those judgments, and they're going to put them in a lockbox. They're going to put the judgments in a lockbox, and they're going to lock the lockbox up, and they're going to have guards to protect the judgments. They're going to have the lockbox there they're going to guard the judgments. Fuck the niggas. Because guess what they're really protecting? They're protecting the judgments. The judgments are actually negotiable instruments. They're negotiable instruments, which whoever controls they're negotiable instruments, or negotiable documents of title to the goods that's covered by that document. And does everybody understand? I hope you guys understand that they're negotiable documents of title. And I've often asked people, which would you rather have? Would you rather have 1,000 Bentleys or 1,000 titles to Bentleys? I know most people would say that, they're like 1,000 Bentleys, but when you start looking at it, well, I'm only going to drive one or two of them. But if I have 1,000 titles to Bentleys, I'm entitled to collect the interest off each Bentley. Does that make sense? Because the owning the titles means that you own the Bentley. Being the owner, the registered owner, is the most important thing, because the Bentley itself, it become cumbersome to hold so many Bentleys. It just doesn't make sense. But I'd rather have titles to it. So now what happens is, what they do is the judgment in and of itself says, look, we got these niggas in the back. We got these niggas in the back, and we own these niggas. They're state's property or the United States property. So what they do is they drive you to the prison. They drive with these titles up front. Then they haul the niggas in the back corridor of the prison. Then when they haul you to the back corridor of the prison, they go take the judgments, and then they go take it to the administrative office. And the administrative office, they look at the judgments, all these niggas in the back, and guess what they do? They put received. They stamp on each one of these judgments, bow, received, bow, bow, received, indicating that, guess what? Now we've accepted responsibility for the trust property. And so now the marshal or the sheriff, they take the trust property, they take these documents of title, and then they go put them back in the lockbox, and they're guarded with the guns again. And then they proceed back to the courthouse with these signed documents from the prison, indicating that now the prison is now this property, this slave, now in the custody of the DOC or the BOP. So now who's the new owner of the slave? The DOC or the BOP, because you failed to register ownership of that nigga that they gave you the title to. Because the whole time, guess what you had title to? You had the charging instrument. The whole time you had a right to register ownership of the property. But guess what you said? You said, hey, now give my property to the DOC. So now, when you remember going back to the taxing, well, this judgment entitled $30,000 a year, and because of the $500,000 that it was initially created. So now it yields $30,000. How much do you think it costs to take care of a nigga in prison? About $10,000, because they'll get all their food from donations and all of this other stuff. Other people with tax liability. So guess what happened? OP, they make a substantial amount of money taking care of niggas. The taxpayers pay for it. But whose property was it? It was your property, but you failed to claim your property. You failed to register ownership of your property. And because of that, when thinking about what the judge says, do you understand that you're giving up your rights? He understands. This judge understands that, hey, you have a right to free this nigga. Matter of fact, we really don't have a case against you. We don't care if you did it or didn't do it. But when it's all said and done, when the obligation is run out, what do? They free the nigga, because after all the money is paid, 5 years or whatnot, then they free the nigga, because all of a sudden the obligation, that judgment has more financial value no more. Financial, that obligation is done. they'll go release the property. Then they'll say that the defendant paid to society. But a point that I try to tell people is, if you were to go take that obligation, that same obligation, and this is all in the law, and understanding this is the whole concept of taxation, they have a duty to collect taxes for who? The people, you personally. When they have since they have an obligation to collect taxes personally, and they're going to do their job because that's what you hired them to do. That's why you gave them a constitution. You told them how they collect taxes. And here's something that most people will never probably understand, and you, please don't misconstrue it. There's Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution. Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution. It says, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of the citizens in the several states. I'm going to say it again. The citizens of each state, all citizens, I can't believe I'm having a brain freeze right here. Hold on a second. I'm going to pull it up. It says the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of the citizens in the states. And legal concept, if you break down the whole science. But here I'm here to tell you guys aren't citizens. Okay, and when I say you're not citizens, and this, people have these other ideology, these thought processing that contradict the true nature of how this works. Citizens are persons that represent the people on paper. I'm going to say that again. Citizens are that represent the people on paper. And when I say that, I'm saying this to make it clear. You are not you are not a legal. You are a natural person. You're a human being. So then, when you understand what a citizen is an artificial person that exists on paper. But and then we're going to go back to the beginning of the Constitution. Who created this shit? We, the people, created this. So now, am I going to put myself in jeopardy? Created the whole system? Of course not. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to use artificial persons to transfer ownership of property. And when you remember what the citizen of each state should be entitled to all privileges and immunities of the citizens in the several states, right? Now, who has the power to lay and collect taxes? We're going to have to understand. We the people, authorize Congress to do that. We authorize them to do that. But if you're to look up what privileges and immunities what it means is that there's an exemption that could be claimed. You remember, we're going to go back to your mama real fast. You remember, their job is taxes. Congress is going to lay and collect taxes. They're going to catch slaves. They're going to trap and trade slaves. If you're to go to the 13th Amendment, if you go to the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, it says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment of a crime whereof a party should have been duly convicted. They didn't say nothing about human beings in this situation. It says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except crime whereof a party should have been duly convicted. So guess what they're going to say? Nigger with gun or nigger with bullet is a crime. And since the term slavery is such a negative thing, guess what they're not going to call you a slave. They're going to just call you a criminal. A criminal is another term for, if you've been convicted of a crime, they're about to subject you to slavery, and because it's authorized, and it's not a bad. So back in the day, they used to have certificates of slavery. It used to be, look, I own this nigga here, and they ask you, is this you, boy? And the nigga say, yeah, that's me. Well, this piece of paper indicated that I own you. Guess what? It was legally enforceable. It says certificate of slavery. Do you see what I'm saying? So when you understand that it says certificate of slavery, shoot, everybody know what that means. It's like, shit, this nigga is his property. Does that make sense? But so when the 13th Amendment of the Constitution said, we're not just gonna call it slavery no more, because these people don't like it. These abolitionists don't like the term slavery. But what we'll do is we'll call them criminals. They'll call them criminals. Call them now. It feels better to justify what they're about to do. So instead of a certificate of slavery, they'll call it a judgment in a criminal case. Instead of a certificate of slavery, they'll create a judgment in a criminal case. So the criminal in and of itself, the criminal, now he's subjected to slavery, and the actual in itself signifies the title to him. The judge is a master, and he's understanding the mastery of slave ownership. Are you following that? So now, when you're able to ascertain that this is actually going on here, and then going back to this, it says the privileges and immunities of the citizens in the several states. If Congress has the authority to lay and collect taxes because they work for me, and I'm going to put a loophole in the law to free my mama. I'm gonna put a loophole in the law to free my mama, and you should use the loophole to free your mama too. Anytime they sit up here and we gave Congress the authority to lay and collect taxes, which they're doing a great job at doing it. They're taxing left and right. But when they start affecting your mama and your person, you have to understand that clause 4, section 2 of the Constitution. It says the citizen of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of the citizens in the several states. This clause is a human right, and it only can be exercised by a human being. It can't be authorized by a citizen, because a citizen is a person that exists only on paper. We'll go, okay, look, okay, you see this? You can't see it right here, but you see this piece of paper that's floating around, popping up? Well, that's a person that sits on a piece of paper. So can that person claim his exemption and immunity or his privileges and immunities? He can't. It has to be a human being who has a signature. A human being with a signature could give life to the person or the citizen that's on that piece of paper. And you're the only one who could actually exercise that right. So now what happens? On the charging instrument, the charging instrument filed with the court. The charging instrument filed with the court or whoever the tax collector is, it says tax the nigga, tax the niggas, tax the niggas. And do they have a right to do that? Yes, because we the people authorize to what? Lay and collect taxes. So now when the judge or the taxing authority looks at the charging instrument that's filed in his office, say the tax collector, if he sees that it's if he sees what he says, it says tax the nigga. It says tax him. So to do on that obligation, they're going to fulfill their duty. But what happens is, and maybe at a later time or something, I could break down the actually show you the law that what you're supposed to actually do is you're supposed to take your copy of that charging instrument that they gave you. You're supposed to take on that charging instrument that they gave you, and you're supposed to put a word called exempt on it. See, the citizen can't do it. It can't do it on its own. It needs a human being to do it. And you being a human being, having the exemption, having the authority, or being one of the people, you put exempt on it and you register it and file it on the same record where it says tax the nigga. Because I'm saying Congress has the authority to tax, but also you could create the exemption for your citizens to exempt their liability. And the same authorization that Congress had to tax, now you exempted the liability because the people are in it who gave Congress the authority to tax. And the people are the same authority to exempt from their tax ability. Now take into consideration, they booked a piece of property, booked a piece. If you exempt the liability on the account, well, there's no reason for the person property to still be in their possession. Now it could be released. There's examples for all of this stuff to make it clear. I'll give you an example. you that's in the you for whatever reason your car goes to the impound lot. Your car goes to the impound lot, and what you have to do is they say, well, you owe us $10, or we'll say $300. You owe $300. Now your car is worth $10,000. Car is sitting in the impound lot, right? And then you're like, well, they have an interest in your car now because they impounded it for whatever reason. So since your car is in the impound lot and you have a right to get your car out because it acts you, so it's either you give them the $300 and lose your rights to the property or the car that's in their impound lot, right? So once you give them your $300, they're going to give you a release paper. Once they give you the release paper, now you're authorized to have your property released because that's what you paid for. Now, what if you just keep your car in the impound lot? If you keep your car in the impound lot, they'll keep it stored. And then they're going to start charging you more fees. They'll charge you more fees because they're maintaining the property. Does that make sense? So it's your job to create the release, to get your property out of there. And this is the thing. So what are you paying for? You're paying for the release. And now once you pay, now you're entitled to what you paid for. Does that make sense? And when you start looking at it, and so now, let's say that they give you a ticket. I have to go off into this exemption thing, this Article 4, Section 2 with this exemption. If you're to look in the law dictionary, and you'll see that privileges and immunities equals an exemption. What you're doing is you're exempting their liability, and you have to understand what an exemption does. An exemption offsets tax liability. I'm gonna say it again. An exemption creates offsetting a tax liability. Who has a job to collect taxes? The government. I can show you this in law. The government has to lay and collect, so they have the tax liability. If you apply your exemption to their account that says that they have to collect taxes, if you exempt their liability, you're creating a credit on their books. Why? Because what they're going to do is they say, well, it takes $30,000 to house a nigga each year. So they collect the taxes from the taxpayers on that obligation. But if you exempt their liability, you've given them a credit. So now if you free the nigga, now that $30,000, that goes now. The BOP they can't claim it no more because you claimed it. Your exemption creates a credit off their tax liability. You don't have to tax this. And I want you to understand what you're. So now, remember, you hired me to go collect taxes, and I'm about to beat your mom's ass for the. And guess what I say? I was like, I need you to sign off on it. And then you tell me no. So then can I say she still owes? I can't claim that she owes. I can't sit up here and collect my money. I can't collect the money that my buddies in the DOC was about to collect. Because all of a sudden you exempted the liability on the account. You want your mom to get beat up. Because my guys over there do the whipping and I pay them to do it. I personally don't like the fact that you're exempting me from my liability, but as based upon the contract that we have, okay, I have to accept it. Does that make sense? So now when you really look at this situation, and then you look at the instrument that they give, they say, well, nigga, you had crack. Well, no, I'll stick to bullets and guns because it's cheaper, the dollar amount. What you're entitled to is if you accept the responsibility for the charging instrument. If you accept responsibility for the charging instrument, now you could come in and say, hey, well, I'm entitled to the interest that you collecting. These are the right as the holder of that obligation. You don't have to go on here talking about if you had a bullet or not. The attorney is tricking you. Somebody, do I hear someone? Okay.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say that, you're doing a great job. And, I wanted to know, with your permission, if we could open the floor right here for some questions, because I see that there are several mounting.
Okay. Sure.
You in the mood to take some questions?
Yes.
Okay, right. Yes, sir.
I personally hope they could. Um, hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want you guys. A lot of people I know that when dealing with the system, we could talk all day, right? We could talk all day, and that's a factor. But when I'm gonna tell you the truth, our system is on paper. Our system is on paper, and what you could prove on paper.
Right.
And our legal system is based upon what you could prove on paper. And everything I'm saying, I could prove it in law. I can actually prove it in law because it's some basic. So, and if you guys truly want to understand how to beat the system, you got to learn how to control some paper.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's not a situation. It's like I'll give you a quick example. When they go give somebody an indictment, right? Mm-hmm. Some indictments could be like 26 pages, and read. They go give a person a 26-page indictment. Wow. The nigga Brandon already did the whoop on you with the guns and stripping you and all this other stuff. Now you got 26 pages of, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And when it's basic concepts, it's basic concepts. So now when you understand what they're really doing is they're really about to con you out of a lot of money.
Right.
So when you're able to understand, so now you should simplify your paper so you could understand the basic fundamentals of understanding and control. Okay, yes. Questions?
The question is, I see one from a sister here.
Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'm sorry if I'm sounding. I have to be real direct.
Fantastic, Shake. Everybody's real happy, but she was, Lakeisha Phillips has asked some questions regarding you, because my understanding, Article 4, Section 2 in the Constitution is what entitles these privileges and immunities. So I guess it's the claim of these immunities. So I have seen from the floor, they're asking, how would you retain this that has been taken? How can you take back what was taken without your knowledge regarding these exemptions that were claimed by the DOC and others? How would you present these that you do have access to?
Can she answer right or left-handed?
I am right-handed.
Well, if I was my right hand, you should take your right hand and you should write on that same instrument that entitled them to trap and trade or charge a nigga. You write on that exact same page, exempt from levy. You put exempt from levy. If you put exempt from levy on it and register it with whoever the tax is, copies of it, and put your social security ID number on it. See, saying this, everything that they're doing, it's actually on the instrument that they're presenting to you. All they need you to do is put exempt on there. See, the person, the artificial entity, it can't do it. The government can't do it. The government doesn't have it doesn't say in the Constitution that they have the authority to exempt liability. Maybe the president can. Okay, maybe he can, but they don't have the authority to exempt liability. Their job is to do what? Lay and collect taxes. But it's the people. See, when you start understanding that they're collecting taxes for you, once they're collecting taxes for you, and then they're about to do your mama in, or your person, and then they present it to you, say, look, wow, we're about to do this. Now it's your responsibility to exempt liability and put it on record. So then the judge will look at Anybody got any access to the law? The law, United States Code, because
What code you want us to look up, Shay?
28 USC section 3014, section D, I believe.
Okay. Section D.
Yeah, it's talking about exempt property. Just see the reason why I want these so that you can implement the law when you actually deal with these people. You don't actually have to so much say what you're talking about.
I'm looking at part of the body, Shay. I'm looking at 28 USC 3014. I don't see a section D.
Okay, well, just a second. It's exempt property. I'm gonna go get it just a second.
Election to exempt property.
Let's go to 14 and what is it? Just a second. I'm gonna find it.
I'll put it up on the screen.
Oh, you gonna put it on the screen?
Quick question, Shay. Before we go in, the question is, how do you register with the authority? You wrote it, you took the charge instrument, you wrote the levy, the tax ID, we're the social, the first two numbers with the hyphen.
Okay, let's deal with it. Understanding this, what the 10 is. The 10 is the taxpayers identifying number.
Right.
Taxpayer identifying works on two different sides. It works on two different sides. You have your social security number or your employer. When they're going to charge a nigga, and with all due, see, I'm looking at guys here, so there's women here, and it doesn't the sex doesn't have anything to do with it. But I'm just speaking from this standpoint. When they tax a nigga, understand what they're doing. They're taxing the social security side because that's the side. That's the side for the debtor. Because the general public operates on the taxing side. And then when you exhibit that you're using your tax ID, when you exhibit that you're using a social security number, it tends to reflect that you don't know what the heck is going on. Okay. However, but when you understand what the employer ID number is, the employer ID number indicates exactly what it is. What is an employer? An employer is one who employs. Employing is the one who is the most factor dealing with our legal system, the employer. So system, when you look at the employer, who is the employer employing? The employer is employing the government. The employer is employing the government. So now you're saying you're identifying your employer ID number. And what are you saying? I am the employer for this governmental entity. And so what you're putting your employer ID number on there, and what are you saying as an employer? That this particular piece of property is exempt. If you're to look at, and I'm breaking down into the preamble of the Constitution, it says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union," and I'm going to use two words, perfect and union. Surface, it says, oh yeah, it has a person thinking that, things is going to be nice and perfect and clean and, wholesome and perfect like that. But no, we're looking from a legal definition. It means to register or record a claim. If you're to look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary, it means to perfect. It means to. And I wrote this definition down here. I don't know how many of you guys got it, but what it does, it says you're securing a claim. In order for somebody to claim or have they have to record it. They have to record it. You have to record your claim in order for you to be able to stand on it.
Now, what's the best way to record these claims with the taxing authority? Is there a particular avenue?
Okay, good. That's kind of it's simple, complex. You send it to them by mail, right. By return. Make a copy of it. Make for an example, you say I owe you $10,000, right?
Right.
If you say I owe you $10,000, well, you sent me a $10,000 bill. it indicated the trust account. It indicated you charging my person, right? Well, then guess what I do? I'm like, ooh, this nigga always say, oh, $10,000. So guess what I'm gonna give you? I'm gonna give you a $10,000 bill. The $10,000 bill that you $10,000 bill. I'm gonna give you the exact same bill back. And now, when it's time for taxes, guess what since you have a tax responsibility, now you're going to sit up here and say that you made $10,000 or whatnot. Now you're responsible for $10,000. But now, if I exempt your liability, now you don't have to pay $10,000 taxes, because now guess what I'm gonna give you? I'm gonna give you a $10,000 bill for it. So now you took a $10,000 loss. But if $10,000 you would have had a profit, then you would have had a liability for the $10,000 cash. But now that I give you a $10,000 bill that's exempting the liability, now you could claim a loss. Therefore, now you don't have to pay how much in taxes?
10,000 plus the interest.
Well, no, the 10,000, because there's no more interest, because the principal was returned. The principal was returned to the person claiming it.
Gotcha, because you allowed them to facilitate a credit.
Correct.
Right.
See, a lot of people, poor people, they can't understand Donald Trump, and I don't want to get into the political thing with people because people don't understand. But he's a brilliant businessman who's created a system, and he knows how to use the bankruptcy system perfectly. And he used the bankruptcy system perfectly, and everybody who's understanding business loves him, because if no Trump's name's on it, depending on what group it is, you're going to make a lot of money. So just imagine if Donald Trump came to me and he said to me, hey, let me borrow $10,000. I'm gonna come to one of your functions. Let me borrow $10,000. I'm like, hell yeah. I'm gonna give him the $10,000. And I'm like, then I say, but now all of a sudden I have 100,000 people coming there. I make $10 million because he simply showed up. And then now what I look like going to Donald and say, hey, Donald, hey, let me get that $10,000 that I lent you. That's what he says. I can't pay you. I'm bankruptcy. So he filed bankruptcy, which means I can't collect taxes from him. I can't collect from him. So now when it's time for me to file my taxes, I could claim a loss because his bankruptcy is registered with the court that says I can't collect taxes from him. Therefore, I'm not going to take a loss because I had a $10,000 tax liability. I had a $10,000 tax liability that I could write off now. Do you see how that worked?
Yes, sir. Maybe you suggest for in registering credit, you take the charge instrument, you write exempt from levy, you write the employer identification number, which is the social. The dash is in between the first two numbers, right?
Correct.
And then you send it to the secretary.
No, you send it to whoever they're saying that they're directing you to send it to.
See, the address file or whatever the case may be.
Like for an example, the court. I do this with the court often.
I'm thinking about a bank as we speak. I'm thinking about a credit card that is about, but go ahead. Now,
understand this, bear in mind here, my most important thing I'm talking about is governmental actions.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to do this to you. And the reason why I'm not going to do this to you is because we're two private individuals. And you might be dumb as a box of rocks. And the reason why I'm saying you might be dumb as a box of rocks, if I go give you my exemption on an obligation and you don't know what to do with it, guess what? This nigga done jacked me. What if you don't pay taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Now I didn't rob you. Child support, dealing with the government, dealing with these people, they all
these
corporations. But then again, what if you own a corporation and you don't understand this? Now you have to break it down to these corporate corporate entities to where it's beneficial to them. Because a lot of people with their LLCs, they ran with the whole concept of LLC, but they don't really understand the whole corporate structure dealing with taxes. And there's people so ignorant they will kill you because they don't know. Motherfucker, I need. But what I'm telling you is, look, all you have to do is use this exemption to offset your tax liability because you sustained a loss from me. You could write it off because you was about to go get this 10,000 that you're demanding that I pay you. You're about to go give it to the government.
Right.
Then the government gives me a tax refund. But so we could I'll exempt your liability. You go give this to the government. Now they can't collect taxes. It was a loss claim. Now we look at this thing. What she was saying. So it's like, how do you? Well, I have to look at a traffic ticket for an example. If you look at a traffic ticket, they tell you to pay to the court administration, or they go tell you to go give it to send a payment to them, right? What you do is you actually take that same obligation, put pay to the order of, put exempt on there, because your exemption creates a credit offsetting tax liability, debits and credits. So now what you do is you put payment on there. I don't know if you got, if you're to look up the word payment in the Black's Law Dictionary, I'm going to pull up the Black's Law Dictionary for payment. Just a second. Payment. Payment is the performance of an obligation by the delivery of money or some other valuable thing accepted in partial or full discharge of the obligation.
Oh.
I'm going to say that again. It says the performance of an obligation by the delivery of money or some other value accepted in partial or full discharge of the obligation. The obligation. Well, look at it. They say that this person owes.
Charge.
Yeah, they charged it. Well, they say, well, if who has the, let's say that we'll look at a corporation. We'll say that this corporation like Pepsi or McDonald's or something, they owe taxes. Well, if I'm exempting their tax liability, I'm entitled to something. If I exempt their tax liability, I'm entitled to something. So I get what I pay for. A classic example of this is when you deal with a coupon.
This is how you offset the liability for the services and goods that Maserati is producing or anybody else.
Yes. Now understand this. You how would I say this? You have to be fair. And when I'm saying you have to be fair, you take into consideration if you start going out here trying to take advantage of, if I teach this class and you guys love what I'm example, and one of you guys end up being a Maserati dealer, right? And then all of a sudden you have this tax liability, then me something of this nature, then I say, can I give you an exemption to do it? And then if you say, yeah, now we have an agreement on it. But if I intend on getting you under a contract, and then all of a sudden I exempted this liability, and then you go to court, now it can become a civil matter. And then the courts might say that I did some fraudulent stuff in this matter based upon the fact that it wasn't an agreement, because it's kind of shady. Does that make sense?
Right.
Do you have a question about that?
No, I mean, hey, fraud vitiates everything. Now, if I get involved in a contract with Maserati, and now I apply for an exemption based on the fact that knowledge wasn't revealed to me and it was held by Maserati, and I could show in the contract where there was some deceptive language, and that's a whole nother issue.
I see, and at the same time, two-part thing. When you and that's true. That's 100% true. Now, at the same time, we have to be fair in our trying as well. So I can't. I'm a pop Maserati off. I'm gonna sign this lease agreement. Sudden, I'm just gonna exempt without them knowing what I'm gonna do. They're expecting a check.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But there's entities. I'll give you an example. Child support on these freaking tickets. Child support on these tickets. Did you ask them? Did you ask child support to come bill you? No. Did you ask them to make you pay for this ticket? No. Well, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna give them. I don't work for the government. Bear in mind, since I don't work for the government, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna give them their bill back, and this could offset their tax liability. Because I'd be damned before I sit up here and go out here and start working for some people that's billing me because I was speeding.
Right.
$200 because I was speeding. You caught me speeding. Now all of a sudden I owe you $200. That doesn't make no logical sense.
No.
But I do owe the bill, but I do have to give them their negotiable instrument back, because then guess what? I've effectively given them a $200,000. I mean a $200 bill. Right. Does that make sense? Yeah, and so now they could clear books.
Yeah.
For accounting. And you know, I point out to a lot of people, and this here's an example of, let's say that you're speeding, you're speeding, right? And they pull you over and they say, "Look, nigga, you were speeding." And then he gives you a stern look. He says, "Nigga, you were speeding." And then he says to you, "Hey," as he hands you the ticket, a $200 ticket, he says, "Either you give me $, or else I'm gonna take your black ass to jail." Now, my question to you is, why was he gonna take you to jail? You got to answer this.
This obligation that was created when you signed the instrument.
And not, I can't say that you're completely wrong, but I'm gonna like this. The average person would say because they were speeding.
Right.
They're going to say because they were speeding, but that's so false. The false situation is, it's not that. It's because they actually gave you a $200 bill. Now you owe them what?
The credit.
A $200 bill.
I got you. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Do you see how that worked?
Right.
So when they say, "Well, nigga, if either you give me," because this out of thinking, you know, this out of thinking.
On the line, trying to get hold of your information, you know, so I got sidetracked. Sorry about that.
Okay. So they give you the $200 bill, and they be like, "I know this nigga ain't gonna give me this worthless $200 bill back, because it understanding the science behind this, it's the $200 bill, but he's gonna register this, and it's gonna show that you owe $200." And so, and I can show you the science, how they break the science behind this. So now it's either you give them the $200, then you could go about your business, but they're going to hold you accountable for the $200 bill on the account, or take you to jail. So if you give them the $200, did it stop the fact that you were speeding? No. So the speeding really isn't. That's the concept of guilt. The concept of guilt, which causes people to be deluded from the initial concept of what's really going on here, because they know how powerful the concept of guilt is. You're right. Going to say something?
I said that it's not a crime actually.
Because who have you injured? But the only injury comes to the state, because the state is accountable, and what they're going to do is they're going to hold accountable. So now we'll look back at her taking care of this. What you do now is you're going to put payment. You put payable to whoever that obligation, whoever you're supposed to pay under that obligation. You put payment to, and you put your name on it. You put exempt from levy. You date it. Put you accepted it. See, because you remember what the definition of payment, it says the performance of an obligation by the delivery of money or some other valuable thing accepted as in partial or full discharge of the obligation. You remember, they have an obligation to you, right? And then they give you the obligation. And what do? You accept the value of that obligation. Then you give it to them as partial and discharge with your credit on it, with your exemption, which discharges the obligation. You remember what? You remember? Look, boss, I caught this woman. She was speeding. I'm about to beat her ass. Beat her ass. I'm not gonna say it's your mama, but you know what your mama's name is. I'm about to beat her ass. Now I give you the obligation, but my obligation is to beat her ass if it until as payment.
Right.
So what do? You
Waive,
write. Say that again.
waive that obligation.
Well, we're going to be more technical. You're going to exempt, because that's what's in the law.
Yes, sir.
Now, you remember we went. Did anybody go under that the exempt property under?
I did get it. We wanted clarity on the issue. Because
Okay,
we got to a certain glitch in the road there. Let me.
it's B3. It's B3. Stay of disposition.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I'll read it for you, Shake, with your permission. I just one last time. It was what was the oh, there you go. Right on for the house coordinator.
Hard.
Yes, sir. Bless your heart. Brother, I'm supposed to raise this right. All right. So B3.
Stay of disposition.
Stay at disposition.
Yes.
Assertion of an exemption shall prevent the United States from selling or otherwise disposing of the property for which the exemption is claimed until it determines whether the debtor has a substantial non-exempt interest in such property. The United States not take possession of, dispose of, sell, or otherwise interfere with the debtor's normal use and enjoyment of an interest in property the United States knows or has reason to know is exempt.
Ooh-wee. Yeah, that it says a mouthful, but a lot of people don't understand this.
What was that 28 USC 3014?
Yes,
And what's that, sir?
B3.
Okay, now I did seem like it said that the court has the opportunity to determine whether that exemption was taken.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to look at this. We're going to look at two factors. Who has the authority to collect taxes?
Congress.
Okay, Congress has the authority to land collect taxes. Who has the power to exempt? Who has the power to citizens and immunities?
The
Citizens of each. That's the person on the paper that's granted the people.
Now, let me ask you this. So the word state does not necessarily have to, is that terminology is not necessarily restricted to the 50 corporate entities called state of franchises. Am I right?
Okay, that's a very blank question. Is that a question that somebody else asked? Because I can break down state in so many different ways because there's so many definitions of state.
Well, that's something I personally ask. We can skip that. We can go to that. We don't.
Because I could get off into that too. But they're all into these fictions. But the reality behind this section here, it says an assertion of an exemption shall prevent the United States from selling or otherwise disposing of the property for which such exemption is claimed until the court determines whether the debtor has a substantial non-exempt interest in such property. Okay. Now, which would you rather? Which would you as a since you're on here? Which would you rather have, the 10,000 Bentleys or the titles to 10,000 Bentleys?
The titles.
See, which is easier to fit in your pocket?
The titles.
So we'll break it down to one, so it's more fit in your pocket a whole lot better. If I were to go rob you, right, and you have a title to a Bentley on you, nigga, give me that money. And guess what I take off you? I take the title to the Bentley off your property as with your money and your keys and everything else. So that title piece of property.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, because I took a piece of property, something that owns you, because that title to that title to the Bentley indicates that you have the ownership rights recognized by the state and the United States to the ownership of the actual Bentley. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we'll look at behind this. It says an assertion of an exemption shall prevent the United States from selling or otherwise disposing of the property for which such exemption is claimed until the court determines whether debtor has a substantial non-exempt interest in such property. The science behind this is we give Congress the authority to land collect taxes. So guess what they're not, they're saying that this property that they took that's on this particular title that they have, this particular, they said, we're taxing this shit. And they registered it with the court clerk.
Oh, and then so one thing I remembered as a sister, we were talking about this earlier. So Congress has the ability to pay taxes and regulate interstate commerce. So the in legas, the artificial fiction is an aspect of said commerce, but when the human being puts forth that exemption, then he pulls that out of commerce, and that's how he can get and lay claim to the goods and services without being taxed. Am I right?
Correct. But see, you have to understand how it works though, and it's a perfect system on how it works. See, because okay, and this is I'm using you to understand it. We're going to talk about a car.
Yes, sir.
I'll break it down. Ownership. Okay, let's say that there's a car, for an example. Okay, and you want to purchase a car for me, right? And you give me $10,000, and I give you the title to the car, right? And I tell you to register the car. Give me $10,000. Now, who owns the car?
You registered.
Why?
Because I registered to you.
No. Let's start.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
went on my head. Sorry.
Okay, so
You registered it, the state owns it.
The state, exactly.
No, not necessarily. I'll break it down.
Yeah. Come on. Run it by us one more time.
The state can have an ownership interest in it. I could break that down too. But look at this. It's like here, the state is a witness. Okay, when you understand that the state is a witness, right? The state could be owners of anything. The state is the owner of all unclaimed property.
Mm.
I'm understand this. The state is the owner of all unclaimed property. Okay, so now we're going to look at this. You want to buy a car from me? You give me $10,000. I sign over the title and I tell you to register it, right? I give you the title.
Mm-hmm.
I give you the title and I say, go register it. Now you paid me for it, right? Now who owns the car?
I do. I got
That's a damn lie. That's a damn lie.
Yeah.
Because guess who owns all property?
The state.
Whoever
the title wasn't. It was never claimed.
The registered owner is.
Right. So I'm not the owner because I didn't register it.
Because you own, let's say that you're shot dead and you die or you attack and die.
Right.
Right after that $10,000 and I gave you the title and I see that title laying around.
It never left the register. It was never broke from your ownership.
What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go take that title. This nigga's dead.
And walk with that 10,000.
Yes.
Right.
See, but now the state recognizes me as the owner. The state recognizes me as the owner of that car. Now, once you give me the $10,000, to complete this transaction, now I have a lien on your property. See, because you're the full owner of it, but I'm the legal owner of it.
Because it was never registered.
Right. So then what? Say that again.
After you gave the title over and with the instructions to it, that never happened. There was no registration.
But now I have a lien on your property rights.
Right.
See, because now the state, if you never register it, the state's still going to hold me liable for the tabs. Do you work?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since I'm liable, until you register it, you can't claim ownership. You have no rights. Are you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you see how you have no rights? Because it's like the state is going to enforce my property rights because I'm the registered owner. But once you register ownership, now they're going to enforce your property rights as the owner. Does that make sense?
Right. So
I
there's
signed-
a way. So there's a way I'm taking it whereby once you have given me the title and you've given me the express instructions to register the title, or I should know to register the title, I can register the title to my own trust or entity and not register the state. Because many times we do register it to the state and now the state assumes jurisdiction of us.
no, what's happened is, and this is where a general concept that people get it mixed up. The state has ownership of all unclaimed property.
Hmm.
They have ownership of all unclaimed property. What happens is, and people get it confused. This, you remember when I registered? If you tried to say that this car was yours, I got some goons. I got some goons with the secretary. I really got some goons. They got guns and they have legal authority to enforce my rights.
Right.
See, because I have a title, a certificate of title indicating that the state is. They say, look, if you were to understand how this works, the state and the United States got goons, and they can enforce the people's rights. They will enforce somebody's rights. But there's people, and I'm going to throw you under the bus right here. They're going to be like people like you that's trying to say that the state don't have a right. And then guess what you're going to do? You're probably going to lose. Because guess what? The state really don't care about, their job is to be witness to as to who the proper owner is, who registered. Do you understand that? And if it's unclaimed property, the state has ownership of unclaimed property. But now the state becomes, and they in a lot of situations they charge a fee because they've now become goons that protect your interests.
Now, what is it to register said title with the state, quote unquote?
So now the state will, you remember in my name?
Right.
Now the state will register owners in your name. So now when it's all, and what they're really doing is they're looking at the state seal. The states, and this is going back to the whole concept of the republic. It's a system of government in which the people hold the sovereign power and elect representatives to exercise that power. And the science behind that is when they look at that state seal, because the people put the sovereign power in the particular state. And I want you to understand how this works. And it's not a negative thing. The people put the sovereign power in the hands of the state. And when you do that, it's because it's dealing with the state is witnesses as to who has the authority over what property that is subject to ownership. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I want to make it clear. It's like, we'll look at the car for an example. I got several cars, but I technically don't have my cars because they're in my business name. Because I put everything in this name for liability purposes. You never put no cars in your name. I don't put nothing in my name. I put it all in my business name because my business, it establishes its own. It creates its own. It creates its own avenue for ownership.
So for those on the call, for those who have secured automobiles in their government name or whatever personal name, how would they transfer ownership to their particular businesses, their particular LLCs, their particular societies or whatever?
Transfer title.
By a bill of sale?
Bill of sales or gifting it. And I break this, I have to break this down to a lot of times I have to break this down so people could get a clear picture of how this works. I got a son and I have a daughter.
Congratulations.
My son, I work that dude. I work him because I want him to be a responsible man. As I want him to be a responsible man, what I will do is if he wants something, I will kind of like charge him for it. Like if you wanted a car, I'm like, well, you got to work on this car. You got to give me $1,000. You have to pay for this car.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Once he pays for the car, I'll sign the title to him. I'll sign the title, and then I'll tell him to go register it. Right? He registers it. Now he becomes the owner of it. Does that make sense? Because once he registered, he becomes the owner of it. Because I executed my rights to the car.
But is there not a way whereby he as a private individual can accept responsibility for the said property and claim ownership without involving the state as a third party?
Yeah, because I'm sorry, I need to just interject here. This is Milani. I need to understand the steps in which to register the vehicle or the conveyance into the trust. Like he said, without the state being involved, or are you saying that the state is always going to be attached to us, whether we put it in private or under the other way?
The state's always going to be involved, and that's not, it's not a bad thing. We're going to look at it like this. The state, what is the state? The state is a witness, indicating that the state is a witness indicating who has the rights and who they're going to ride with if in the event discrepancy controversy.
Well, let me real quick, Shane. I'm gonna back out. Sister Belani, those issues that you are presenting in that inquiry, we're gonna handle that in another forum. Right now, we're trying to limit this to a particular subject matter. With your permission, and you can feel free. You can feel free.
She can elaborate. With all due respect, she can elaborate on that because it's a factor in here. What we do is we tend to look at the state as something extremely negative. But if we were to look at the taxing aspect of everything, let's say that they're taxing, the state says that, well, we're going to register it in such and such name. Now you got to pay this tax on it. But now if we start going back to the whole concept of exemptions, it's okay to register it in the state because the state acts as a witness of as entitled to ownership. Well, what if they're taxing a registration fee and all this other stuff? Well, as soon as they send you a bill, you use an exemption to offset that bill, but they're still a witness as to your ownership. So the state is not it's technically not a bad guy, but the state is a witness because what if I try to come to your house? What if I try to come to your house and take some stuff and say this doesn't belong to this belongs to me? Well, the state is a witness as to who owns the property. And then they got goons, the sheriffs to come out and to protect your ownership interests. Did that make sense?
Also, yeah, it does make sense. But does this also protect us? So if we're registering under our private status, or is that something that, because there's private versus other statuses. From what I know, we're wanting to obtain or keep our private status and operate under that private status or doing business under that private status.
You talking about it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here, watch this. There's anybody got a Black's Law Dictionary?
That app you referenced, Shake.
No, that Black's Law Dictionary actually costs money, but
here, right on deck.
I've got Black's Law where you want to look at.
Okay. Well, okay. When you break it down, we're going to look at the term under person. You look up artificial person.
Artificial person.
I have it, but I want somebody else to read it so we could get a clear picture of how this works.
Shake Reggie, you got it?
I'm looking it up. I got it on my app on my phone. So
dictionary,
hold on.
Okay, if you can't read it, read it.
Artificial persons created and devised by human laws for the purpose of society and government, as distinguished from real persons. Corporations are examples of artificial persons.
Anybody have it from a Black's Law or
That was
Black's
a 6.
See, okay, but they're up to 10 right now. I'm using the 10. I believe it's a 10 that I'm using. If somebody doesn't have it, I'll read it. But and the reason why I'm pointing it, I would like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Read it to us, Sheikh.
Okay, it says artificial person is an entity such as a corporation created by law and given certain legal rights in human being. A being, real or imaginary, who for the purpose of legal reasoning is treated more or less as a human being. An entity is a person for the purposes of due process and equal protection clause, but is not a citizen for the purpose of the privileges and immunity clause of Article 4, Section 2, and the 14th Amendment. The term, it also termed fictitious person, juristic person, judicial, legal person, and moral person. Okay. Now, I could break down the whole concept of what your person is. Your person is an artificial person, right? And I understand that since he is an artificial person, he is a corporate fictions are artificial person, right? It's created by law and certain legal rights and duties of a human being, a being real or imaginary, who for the purpose of legal reasoning is treated more or less as a human being. So when I go trapping, when they go trap and trade a nigga, and understand the sign, they're talking about an artificial person, but they're going to treat him like he's a human being. Am I John Doe? No, I'm a human being. John Doe is an artificial, right? But now understand how this works. John Doe could do 10 life sentences. I can't. I'm a human being. When I die, I'm done. But John Doe could do 10 life sentences. So now we're going to go back to the very bottom of this where it says, it also termed a fictitious person, juristic person, judicial person, legal person, moral person. But the key word, the key term that I'm using here is the legal person. Understanding the constitutional legal person. Now, a legal person, in essence, means artificial. I want you to understand that. Legal in this aspect means artificial. Now, a legal person is an artificial. What was her name again?
Sister Belani.
Sister Milani?
Belani.
No,
Benlani?
it's Bolani. Bolani.
Bolani.
Bolani.
Bolani. Can you hold a title?
I hold, yes, I can hold legal title.
No.
I cannot.
You
The
can never
state
hold
only
legal,
holds legal title?
because a legal person is an artificial person.
Okay.
The term legal also means artificial.
All
The only
capital
person that could
letters
hold,
will hold it.
say that again.
The all capital letters thing will hold it, that artificial person or that legal person.
Yes, he's an artificial person. He's a legal person who holds legal title. You could have rightful title, but we're in a court of law that deals with the legal system, which is an artificial system that only deals with artificial or legal persons, fictitious persons. So you can never hold legal title because you're not going to sit in the county register holding a piece of paper saying I own such and such address, I own such and such car. So that legal person is going to sit there with the county review that.
Yeah,
Does that kind of
it
like
does.
answer
So
your
we're
question?
basically just hiding it.
No, well, and Grand Sheikh and Sister Belani, we got a brother on the call that might be able to give you a little insight as to answer to that particular question. Brother Reginald Fields, he's one of our authorities on like that. Sheikh Abdul Rakib, we're gonna come right back to you, but with your permission, we're gonna let the Sheikh Reginald give us just a little more insight so that Sister Starseed Bolani may have a little more detail as to what she's seeking.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Peace and love, family. I wasn't expecting to get on here like this, but we'll go ahead and talk through it real quick. kind of the bottom line in what you're talking about, especially when you're dealing with the public and private. Those of us that have set up trust, and just like the brother was saying, a trust is also a person. So we set up entities